Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Elspeth Rothwell. I'm a founding board member of Financial Narrative and the EMEA CEO of Vested, a leading financial services marketing communications consultancy. I'm delighted to be here with you today as your host, talking with our guests about how international financial services brands can navigate the emerging marketing and comms opportunities in the Middle East. For those of you who are new to Financial Narrative, we're a global network of more than 1,000 financial services, marketing and comms leaders who come together to network, learn, and hopefully get a little inspiration and fun along the way. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by two partners, Lisette and Adam, who are part of a new initiative we launched this year, which is our International Agency Network, where we've recruited best-in-class financial specialists from around the world to support our members. A couple of pieces of housekeeping before we get going. We have an hour booked for the webinar and plan to run for about 40 minutes of conversation. We very much welcome your questions and views, and I'd ask you to please send them to me directly via the Q&A option that you will be able to see on screen rather than chat and messages. So that way I can field them as we go. Where relevant, I'll add them into the conversation, and otherwise we'll hold them to the end when we'll open up the floor. I also just want to note that we're going to be running under Chatham House rules. So there may be questions that I feel are sensitive, which I will make sure we pick up at another time. We also have guests joining us from all around the world here. So I'm hoping we can hear your views and broaden all of our horizons together. So with no further ado, I would like to welcome our guests to stage and ask them to introduce themselves. Hi, everyone. Here they come. So Adam, you're in first. Could you introduce yourselves to our audience today?
Hi, great to be here. I'm Adam Harper. I'm the founder and managing partner of Ashbury. We're a communications consultancy with offices in Singapore, Hong Kong, and the UAE.
Thank you. Lisette, you're next.
Hi, I'm Lisette Lombard. I'm the owner of Firefly PR. We're a boutique Goldilocks agency based in South Africa. We help businesses build their brands in Africa and just help them navigate the social nuances and the language barriers. And we specialize in financial services. And I also write investment reports for the Financial Times specialist publication Mandate Wire that writes investment articles and investment trends in Africa. I have covered some countries in the Middle East, and I'm happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And last but very definitely not least, Farah, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Elspeth. My name is, as you know, Farah Farooq. I head communications for HSBC in Middle East, North Africa, and Turkey. I am, from the region, born and brought up here in the UAE, in Dubai. About 20 plus years of experience across public and private sector, and with HSBC for the last 14 years. Delighted to be here.
Wonderful, thank you. So we have got some great guests, and as you can hear, that means we've got perspectives from around the world that we're going to be able to bring to this conversation. So I'm going to start right at the beginning. I think we should set the scene here. Why are we having the conversation now? Ultimately, why is this focus of finance really turning to the opportunity in the Middle East? And Farah, I'd love to turn to you first to get your thoughts.
So why the Middle East? I would say, why not the Middle East? And it's really down to the economics, right? Particularly when you look at the GCC, the region as a whole, it's one of the most dynamic financial hubs globally at the moment. It's focused on economic diversification, and that is just creating the amount of opportunity is unprecedented. And it's very real, right? It's evident across all sectors. You look at trading, investment, capital markets, wealth management, tourism. The region is just, no longer just a source of capital. It's becoming a destination for capital. It's attracting capital. The MENAT countries collectively, they represent over, $4 trillion in GDP, and have seen FDI inflows increase by more than 20% year on year since 2021. So for communication, particularly in this environment, there is a massive growth story. And, again, as I said, the question is why, no longer why the Middle East, it's really how do we make the most of the opportunity here? And, if I would just add here that, earlier it was Dubai being the main poster child, but now the entire region is flexing its economic might. Every single government, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Egypt, all have these vision plans, and that's creating an immense attraction for the region.
Brilliant, thank you. So it's a growth opportunity. Adam, talk to us about how you're seeing the growth opportunities. I know it's something very dear to your heart.
It is, yes. We set up our presence in the UAE last year because I went back there for the first time in 20 years. I'm ashamed to say. I went to Dubai on my first ever international business trip. Didn't go back for 20 years and then went back in 2023 and was just completely blown away by the level of energy and ambition and the way that the world was kind of meeting in Dubai. And it had become, more and more important to more of our clients. So that's why we set up there. And for me, the attraction is very clear. This is a region with significant capital to deploy around the world, and that makes it very interesting to our asset management clients. And we've seen a lot of them setting up in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi and indeed in Saudi Arabia as well. But it's also a region that is in a hurry to diversify its economies and wants to bring in investment and expertise from around the world. So, in an age where protectionism really dominates the narrative, this is a region that is increasingly open, is really encouraging two-way trade and investment. And for me, that, as the owner of a communications firm, there's just so many great stories to tell about that. And it's a great growth opportunity, both for clients going into the region and for Middle Eastern clients who are looking at international horizons.
Brilliant, thank you.
On my side, I can just say I've recently been to the UAE, and I've moderated some panels for the FT Live conference for the future of asset management, Middle East. And there's really been a lot of regulatory shifts conducive to investment. One of the examples is the Abu Dhabi Global Markets Financial Center, who's based their regulation on the English law, and it's very tax friendly. And of course, like Farah mentioned, there's a lot of development happening with the Gulf Cooperation Council countries just having new vision plans for 2030, 2040, and 2050. So there's a lot of development happening. And then, of course, there's shifts from asset managers that's opening up local offices because of the localization requirements in the region.
Brilliant, thank you. So, as I said, our audience is very international today. And I know, having looked down the list, that quite a lot of them are probably going to be thinking about the Middle East for the first time in terms of how they're building marketing or communication strategies, how they think about that from a perspective, maybe they're sitting in America, maybe the UK, maybe Australia, based on the people we've got on the list. What are the opportunities? What should they be thinking about as they really start to think about it for the first time? And Farah, can I come to you first on that one as well?
Sure. I think, as I said, I think the opportunities are immense, right? What is really important, though, for any organization wishing, to have success here in the region is to have a long-term view, right? When it comes to financial services, I remember decades ago, there was this view around, suitcase bankers and, come make a deal and out. And that's for a while now, that's not been a case. And that applies to every business. If you're looking to take advantage of the opportunity here, come with a long-term view, understand the region, understand the culture, and success here hinges on respecting and understanding local norms. And it's like we say, it's a melting pot. It's and East-West meets here really. And when it comes to things like languages and tone, it really matters understanding Arabic communications. It's not just about translations. We say Arabization. So it's about, localizing to the different nuances. Saudi Arabia would be different, Egypt would be different, Qatar would be different, UAE would be different. And when it comes to stakeholder engagement, again, relationship and trust is extremely important here. Organizations that localize thoughtfully and then engage in a sustained, community-aware way, these are the ones that will, that will have lasting traction here.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Adam?
Yeah, I think, if you're coming to the Middle East for the first time, if your organization is looking at establishing a presence in the Middle East for the first time, one really important point to bear in mind is that these are still the very early stages of a very long-term transition for this region. You're talking about economies that were very driven by energy exports for, since the Second World War, and are now embarking on this kind of multi-decade process of diversification. So if you're coming from a mature, developed economy, this is a very different landscape. That these economies are going through very rapid change. They are shifting their economic model. They have this long-term vision. They have a very clearly defined national strategy in many cases, which is not necessarily the case in more developed economies. And so coming into the region, I think as communicators and reputation advisors, we need to be thinking about how our organizations align with that strategy and align with that diversification as well. I think you also need to be ready for the sheer diversity of the Middle East, as Farah was saying. And I mean, I'm talking particularly here about Dubai and Abu Dhabi, but these are places with a quite astonishing degree of diversity of people from all around the world. And what is, clearly what is drawing people to the region and what is drawing financial institutions from the US and Europe is the capital in the region. There's some expected to be $3.5 trillion of private wealth in the Middle East by 2027. And you're talking about some of the world's biggest sovereign wealth funds as well, with over $5 trillion of AUM right now. So everybody is looking for access to that capital in financial services. That is a key reason to be in the Middle East. And I think the challenge is, to explain a value proposition to economies in the Middle East that goes beyond just being there to access capital. Basically, it's about how you can contribute to the local economy and to that long-term process of diversification that I mentioned.
Yeah, I think from an African perspective, a lot of African sovereign wealth funds and development fund institutions have traditionally always gone to the Middle East to raise capital, and it's quite difficult to have a look and pinpoint the outflows from Africa to the Middle East. But in 2024, $94 billion were channeled through foreign investment from the Middle East to Africa, specifically also to Egypt and to tourism and urbanization. And there was about $72 billion that was channeled from the UAE to Africa in renewable energy projects. But there's also a lot of asset managers that's now starting to set up local offices. And like Adam was alerting to it, there's a lot of global companies and global talent that's moved into the area. So there's a lot of nuances that you've got to be aware of. And then obviously they want to take advantage of the geographic region. So if you're a stock market trader, you might be based in Dubai, and then you have access to stock markets in the Middle East late afternoon, while having access to stock markets in the West, where if you were based in New York, you might not necessarily catch the stock markets in the East on time for the day. And then, of course, I've spoken to an Abu Dhabi-based asset manager who's recently just had a wonderful mandate and from a discretionary fund manager where they've invested quite a significant amount of capital. And the South African pension funds that I've spoken to have alluded to, there's a great opportunity to invest in private markets, especially with the volatility that's happening against high interest rates and inflation. And they are seeing value in offshore private markets, and this is a great opportunity to invest in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if I could just maybe add a very quick point to that, I think coming from a developed markets perspective, like I say, early stages, financial markets in the Middle East are really small by comparison to the US, for example. The market cap of Abu Dhabi and Dubai combined is less than 1% of total global stock market cap. New York is like 50%. So, and there's almost no private credit in the region, for example, although there is some private equity. So I think, you have to make an adjustment to a story that is at a different stage, basically, and one where there's actually an opportunity for global financial institutions to come in and be part of creating more diversified, better financed economies.
If I could just jump in there, Adam made a good point about, how the region's markets contribute to the global market cap. But at the same time, and it's, quite timely, just about a week ago, HSBC issued a report with Dubai financial market. And, we know that the DFM's ambition is to be among the top 4 financial hubs and, financial markets globally. And just if you look at last year, and they're very methodical and very concerted about how they're going about it, right? And just if you look at 2024, 85% of the trade that they saw, the investment they saw was from global investors, international investors. So if we were to just look at equity capital markets, debt capital markets, we are seeing a huge influx from international investors into this region. And I think, with the current tariff situation as well, I think this region is going to have a lot to gain.
Yeah. I know I'm hearing ambition, but I'm hearing there's a plan. So I guess the question for the people listening are, well, how do they take advantage of that? And I think, Farah, you talked about it slightly, but what's the cultural sensitivities that people need to be aware of? I think, everyone's very well aware of not coming in with their elbows out and whatever else. But what would you see? What are you seeing where organisations are doing well? And perhaps what would you warn against?
I think, as I said, any market, right? If you were to go to Asia or any new market, understanding the market's culture and tradition is really important because, you want to make sure your message sticks. You want to make sure that it is localized. And, to think that one message across, across the spectrum of countries here in Middle East, or MENAT as we call it, is going to work, it just wouldn't. A message that works in Dubai may not land the same way in Riyadh, Cairo, or Istanbul. So you're speaking to multiple audiences. You're looking at retail consumers, institutional investors, regulators, high net worth, across jurisdictions and with varying financial literacy, regulatory frameworks, and media ecosystems as well. Dubai is probably, fairly advanced and tends to be sort of the regional hub for media. So you find a lot of regional publications based here, and Saudi Arabia is getting there as well. So you find a lot of Arabic, pan-Arabic media based there. And, when it comes to financial messaging, it must be simple, but without being reductive, authoritative, but not overbearing, right? So these are just some of the nuances that you need to be familiar with. And like I said, deep market knowledge and local expertise is really important.
Yeah. Is that?
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it's also about long-term relationships. We've seen that in Africa, it takes time. It's not just transactional. You've got to just build those relationships. And it's not necessarily always what you can do, but who you know. And just be aware of cultural nuances that's in the region. I think it's also important to be aware of the defamation laws, just like in any country. You've just got to be aware of those sensitivities. But one doesn't always have to be controversial. I think it creates an opportunity for communicators to kind of get the messaging across, to try and be transparent, to kind of just show how they are contributing to the vision plans of the various countries. And just these different nuances. I think the family offices that I've spoken to, they might want to invest with, and they want to kind of invest in new investments, but they don't necessarily always want to co-invest with other family offices, which is a great opportunity for global asset managers to kind of partner with them. And it's just to be aware of that. And then obviously, like Farah alluded to, that there is a lot of language barriers and cultural differences. And Saudi is very different from the UAE, where you'd need someone on the team that would be able to speak Arabic.
Yeah, I completely understand. And I think, Adam, based on having only recently opened up your doors in the region, talk to us a bit about how that works and sort of how you make sure you get up to speed. And I know we're going to dive into sort of some of the thinking research you've done around audiences in particular, which might be helpful here as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think in any new market that you enter, or any new strategy that you embark on, obviously understanding where your audience is coming from is critical. I think we all know that. So gaining some insight into the priorities and the needs and what is most relevant to these audiences in the Middle East, I think is a valuable investment before trying to start local communications programs within the region. I guess a closer knowledge of the audience comes through experience and time in the Middle East. But ahead of that, there are a lot of data indicators that can help us understand what is most relevant to these audiences. And perhaps not surprising, I mean, maybe a couple of key takeaways. First of all, as I think in every region of the world, audiences, let's say institutional investors in the Middle East, care primarily about the Middle East. They are going to be interested in stories that have in content and angles that have local relevance and impact. That goes without saying. So I think, we can't assume that you can go into the UAE, for example, and talking about investment opportunities in the US is necessarily going to engage that audience. Similarly, or equally, we find that if you look at the US as an investment destination, there's clearly in the data that we see mixed opinions about how to react to what's going on at a policy level in the US at the moment, and you'll see simultaneously that increasing investment in the US is highly relevant to institutional investors in the UAE, and so is diversifying away from the US. So I guess we see President Trump in the region at the moment attracting lots of investment from it. So clearly that is part of the plan, but we can also see that there's a lot of interest in diversification in terms of investing in other regions. And for us, as a firm with roots in Asia, that's particularly interesting. We do see very strong and increasing connectivity between the Middle East and Asia. More Middle East sovereign wealth fund investment in China. Just very recently, we saw a firm called Seviora, which is an asset management unit of Temasek, the sovereign investor and the state investor, I beg its pardon, in Singapore, set up in Abu Dhabi. So, we've got another dynamic going on there where Asia and the Middle East are coming closer together as well.
Farah, how do you think about segmenting audiences? So when you're working across the region, because your remit is across the region, how are you thinking about sort of the segmentation and targeting of audiences? Well, I think we've talked about needing to be local, but any sort of insight you can add in there would be super helpful to build on Adam's points.
So I think, horses courses is important. You have to make sure that your message is targeted to the right audience. So, what your retail customers are interested in is going to be very different from what your institutional B2B audience is interested in. So, targeting messaging, I think, is probably the easy part. It's the right vehicle to get the message out there, because the media landscape still tends to be, it's still developing. So you don't have, it's not like we have hundreds and hundreds of finance and trade publications here, and tier 1 trade and finance publications. At the end of the day, it's the same daily, or newswire that you're targeting for all your stories. So what's obviously becoming increasingly helpful and useful is social media when it comes to targeting your retail audience. So and that tends to be a developing area, right? It's one that the region is trying to understand, because it's for corporates and for international corporates, social media is also rife with a lot of challengers. So navigating that is also important. So I think we'll all agree, tailoring the message really important. But tailoring the right media platform is even more important.
Thank you. Can I just follow on that? In terms of social media specifically, which of the platforms are you sort of seeing or are being talked about in terms of activations as well? Because I'm seeing about it when you're talking about a retail audience. Which are the most popular and impactful at the moment that people are talking about and that your organisation may be trialling and using?
So when it comes to, so are you asking about HSBC or just organizations?
You can answer it. You can answer whichever way you want to.
I think I'll keep it broader. I think when it comes to the business audience, B2B, of course, LinkedIn is a bit more sophisticated. So I think a lot of organizations are using that. We're seeing increasingly government organizations, presence on LinkedIn as well. X is very, very popular among not just your Gen Zs but your millennials, and we certainly see governments present there because they were trying to attract that audience and target that audience. But now LinkedIn is becoming increasingly useful. I think Facebook probably one of the least used by corporates. I think advertisers probably yes. Instagram, again, with some of the government organizations, Instagram is also becoming quite popular.
Brilliant, thank you. I just think it's really helpful when we've got the audience on to sort of get into some of the specifics as well as talking about it on breadth. I don't know, Adam or Lisette, if you've got any views to sort of add to that based on conversations that you've had with organisations in the region at all.
Sorry, Lisette, please go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying from a journalist point of view, there's a lot of it's helpful when you go and have a look at and search for stories, especially on LinkedIn. It would be credible, and there's a link to a press release or to a website or an announcement that could also make your job as a journalist easier and getting the information that might not always be readily available. So that's a great avenue to use.
And I think I would just add, sorry, Adam, go ahead.
No, please, Farah.
I was just thinking that, if you think about, a lot of the government messaging, it's they use different platforms for different things. So when you want to engage your target audience on a lot of the community activities, a lot of the sort of well-being, activities, ESG, really an important theme. I think for that, you find that Instagram is more is better because of the visual sort of representation that you can showcase. X, again, for your really when we look at a lot of trade agreements, bilateral, etc. X tends to be prominently used for that. Businesses, multinational, LinkedIn, probably more, governments getting there.
Yeah, I was only going to add that there's quite a dynamic media scene and a new media scene in the Middle East, as well as social media So, for example, Semaphore is present in the Middle East now and writes some really interesting stuff about the region. Has a very good newsletter that is well supported by advertisers. And in fact, that away from finance, there've been quite a lot of new magazine launches, I believe, in the Middle East. Farah would know more about this than me, but I think Hello Middle East has been launched now. So there's there's quite a lot of new publications coming into the market, but it's also quite volatile. So apart from the established dailies that Farah mentioned, there was a big splash last year about the launch of a new platform called Monify, which was backed by an Egyptian billionaire. They spent a lot of money, they hired a lot of journalists, and they've, all but folded it now. It didn't last very long. Basically, it's pivoted to something else, but it's essentially not a media organization in the way that it was. So I guess, there's an element of care that needs to be taken in who you work with in building your reputation in the region.
Really interesting. I was actually going to go on to ask about media, so I think can we spend a bit of time expanding there? And Farah, I don't know if you can add a bit more about what Adam was talking about. I know you've already talked about the fact that we're sort of talking about a smaller pool of titles that we're talking to, but what else can you share with our listeners today?
I was just thinking about, how we are in the region now attracting a lot of good talent, strong talent from international publications. I'm sure a lot of people know that Bloomberg Manus Cranny has joined the National here. I think he's just started this week. He's probably, I don't know, he was probably in Saudi covering the Trump visit. But so we are seeing talent move here, and that's clearly an indication of the MENAT growth story, right? The attraction of the story and the potential of the story in years to come. So I think, on the talent side, we're certainly seeing more influx. I'd second what Adam said. It's not very easy, really, for new platforms, for new publications to really make inroads. It takes a long-term approach, and you need to be ready, to play the long game.
I also think there's great opportunities with a lot of conferences and the uptick in trends and conferences that are being hosted, especially in the UAE, and a great opportunity for especially for private companies to connect with the media. I think they're hungry for stories and stories that align with the vision plans, and the talks to renewable energy or anything in financial services would be, I think, welcome, because it's an opportunity to shape the media landscape. And in terms of the financial services industry, I think there's a great opportunity for global communicators, where the financial services industry are still being developed within the GCC, and they might have focused on other industries like tourism, and those communicators might not always necessarily have the financial expertise that global companies can bring when they open up local offices and kind of help upskill, while they can take advantage again from the local talent that understand the cultural nuances and they understand the language barriers.
Yeah, talk to us a bit about just going on from that, sort of, what are the stories which work well? If you talk about it from an earned perspective, Farah, I'll probably turn to you first, but Adam, you'll have a view from advising clients coming into the region as well. What's sort of the secret sauce? What are the things which you should be doing and also should be avoiding in terms of putting stories together?
Me first.
If you don't mind, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. The secret sauce. I think, as I said, localization, really, really important. Research tends to work well, right? Media here is increasingly becoming more sophisticated, and you need to work hard on your story. The key business media, they want hard news. They want, strong numbers, and you should, fluff pieces are not going to work. There was a time when they did, many years ago. They don't anymore. And press conferences, press events, there just isn't enough value and time for that unless you're making a major announcement. I remember back in the days, it was so easy to pull a press event together and get bums on seats. Not anymore. You must be making some, a 600 billion or $1 trillion announcement to get media to come from your event. But as I said, I think research works, but not lazy research, because you see a lot of, desktop sort of YouGov kind of surveys, and that's not going to work anymore. You need to put in proper thought, break through the clutter. What's really what insights are missing out there? That's what you need to work on to make your story credible and a headline that really stands out.
Brilliant. Adam?
Yeah, I concur. I think with research, we've seen some very good results from that for clients. But especially where, going back to my point about local relevance, you have a survey or a study that sheds some light on, let's say, investors from the Middle East, or what corporates are doing in the Middle East. So it's got that local relevance. We recently put out a survey for a client in the Middle East with some insights into the investment intentions of LPs, institutional investors in the region with regard to private markets funds. And I think there was some solid insights in there, but we were sort of positively surprised by the amount and quality of media coverage that it generated. So there is definitely an opportunity with intel that sheds light on what organizations are doing in the region. I think we also, we do need to remember that this market, this economy, although it's a subject of a lot of interest, it still isn't studied and analyzed as much as the US economy or the European economy. So there's quite a lot of appetite for solid, as Farah said, not lazy research and insights into what's really going on.
That's really helpful. And so that combination of research and then I guess thought leadership on top of it in terms of having something really thoughtful coming through. Is there anything for you on that one to add?
No, I think that is something that giving valuable intel that is a newsworthy story that's topical, illustrating what you're doing and with hard facts is definitely the way to go with media.
Yeah,
and if I may add onto that, we've talked a lot about the economic transformation, the diversification, the vision plans, right? Saudi's got their 20, 30, 40, 50 plans, UAE, Qatar, Egypt, a lot of these markets. So if you have stories that are linked to the national agenda, that really works well.
Yes.
Regional media here are also operate with strict regulatory and cultural parameters. So accuracy, relevance, and a respectful tone are non-negotiable.
Yes, definitely. And I think the sectors of, obviously from the National Development Plan, it's not always oil, it's maybe steering away from the agenda of oil and going more into looking at real estate development, smart cities, renewable energy, ESG themed investments. Those are themes that kind of align with the national agendas of the various countries. And of course, real estate development. I know sovereign wealth funds are quite pushing infrastructure development, and asset managers are talking about real estate investments. So there's a lot of opportunity there.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm going to go to a question from the audience, and I'm going to two-part it based on what the question is. So I would just sort of say that within the financial narrative community, obviously a lot of the time we're talking about professions, but we're also talking about people's career opportunities as well. And I would imagine we've got people on the line today going, that could be interesting. Maybe I could make a move. Maybe I could move into the region. This sounds like it would be fun to work in. So I wonder if we can get a bit of perspective first about what the career opportunities look like if you're a communications or marketing professional within it. And then the specific question I have here is around how common is it to have sort of corporate affairs, communications, marketing leaders on Exco, so sort of right at the top of organisations as well. So Farah, I'm sorry, I'm going to go directly to you on that one in terms of opportunities as someone who's made an incredible career in the region to talk us through a little bit about your thoughts on that.
Sure. So I think increasingly, right? I sit on our Middle East Executive Committee in the bank. I know many of my counterparts, I guess I can't name, but across the government, across, sort of payment providers, many other local banks, communications has earned a seat on the Executive Leadership Committee a long time back.
So I think that's really interesting, because I don't think that is as common actually in other parts of the world. So why do you think that is? Is that because we've got this fast growth and opportunity, and you're shaping things in different ways, do you think?
I think over the years, and especially if you look at the Dubai story, right? Dubai was the poster child for the region for the longest time. And now you've got Saudi Arabia and Qatar and most of the GCC markets and many of the other Middle East markets driving similar or probably even more ambitious business plans and vision plans. And if you look at the Dubai model, the communication, marketing, PR was what Dubai was really good at, and so it was a great case study that everybody learned from. And I think that in itself, and the overall development of the market as financial markets have developed, as trade, investment, and the overall economic hub status developed for the region, so did ancillary services and functions. So communications, advertising, and control functions like compliance, regulation, all of that has become important. So like I said, Dubai's successful model, everybody has seen that. So now when you look at some of the major, whether it's sovereign wealth funds, whether it's government's economic arms, they've got pretty elaborate communication schemes in place.
And if I may just add to that, is it operating in silos? Is communications over here and say marketing over here? Is it more connected than we might see? I would just be curious to see how that's generally is your experience.
A lot more connected. Yeah, definitely a lot more connected. I think Lisette was talking about events, right? Events is becoming a hub for some really global fixtures, right? When it comes to events, you've got capital market summits here in the UAE, you've got Saudi Arabia, you've got FII in Saudi Arabia. We had Expo, we had COP here in the UAE as well. So with that, I think organizations have learned that marketing and communication have to go hand in hand. Because social media, right? There's always a debate. Where does social media sit? Is it, is it one for marketing? Is it one for communications? But often there are stories with reputational risk, which are probably communications owned. But then there are a lot of promotional stories that are marketing owned. Working together and collaborating together is the only way to go.
Yes, and I also think there's opportunity for development and preparing leaders in whether it's being panelists at these conferences or whether it's just helping them with social media savviness or media training. There's all these other services apart from just having your strong writing skills and research ability and investments. Yeah.
And look, I would put in a word for Abu Dhabi here as well. As we recently incorporated there in Abu Dhabi Global Market, and I'm a big fan of what they're doing. I think, as Farah said, Dubai has excelled at PR over the years, but Abu Dhabi now, from an events perspective, I would say Abu Dhabi Finance Week, if you're in the financial world, is critical. If you have a presence in the Middle East. That is, one of the leading financial gatherings of the year. FII in Saudi would be another. And the way that they promote that, the kind of profile that's generating now as it's grown both in earned media and via their social and owned channels is incredible. It's a very, very impressive operation. So I would definitely want to put that on the map for global financial institutions who are looking at the region.
And Adam, talk to us a bit about it from the team side as well, because I know that a lot of your team who've been sitting in other parts of the world were like, I'll go, can I go, please, and be part of it. So again, think about an audience who might be thinking about the opportunity. Talk to us a bit about, what motivated them, what they were excited about.
So the people who moved to the UAE with Ashbury have all thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think we're glad to make the move. I think we imported talent from Hong Kong to the UAE, which has worked very well for us. And I think in the early stages that made sense because these were people setting up an office. They were people that we knew already. They love it. I think I'm safe to say, and that's worked out very well. I think from what I hear, and Farah would definitely have insights into this. It's quite a different domestic market to hire communications talent in. I've taken some advice and some views on that, and that is a hurdle we have yet to clear. So yeah, Farah, without wishing to put you on the spot, I mean, I might turn that one back to you. The accessing talent in the UAE is how have you found that over the years?
So. Like I said, I think the industry has developed, right? If I look at my last 20 to 24 years in the region and in the industry, it's certainly developed. It's come a long way, and you find a lot of local talent that has moved out of the region to developed markets, gone, learned, taken experience, brought it back. So you see a lot of that. But you also see, because you have major multinationals, organizations based here that have strong corporate communications departments, you see a lot of talent gravitating across, right? You see relocations, you see short-term assignments, people coming down here, often for a couple of years or for a couple of months, and then deciding not to leave at all because they just find the region and the story that's unfolding so attractive. And let's be honest, if you look at the current environment and for the last few years, Middle East and Asia are the real growth regions. So it is, when you look at Middle East, it's, I think, right up there in terms of global relocation ambition for expat professionals. It's right up there. You speak to, we open up roles and we see interest from all over the world.
Yeah.
And Adam, do you see commonality with that the other way in that case, I think, from sort of having sat in Asia for as long as you have and then coming through?
Yes, I do. I guess, I've worked in Hong Kong for a long time, live in Singapore at the moment, spending more time in the UAE, and I've seen all of these places evolve in terms of being magnets for international talent. All three of those places remain very attractive to international talent. But I think Farah is right. The UAE is it's a very compelling story at the moment for a whole range of reasons. I think, from a personal perspective, it's a nice place to live. You get plenty of space. Amenities are good. Tax is low. Let's just say tax is low. From a professional perspective, it's just such an interesting story because, as I say, it is still in historical terms the reasonably early stages of this massive transformation, which is going to change those economies profoundly. So for a communicator, what is not to like?
Love it. We're coming up on time, so I just want to prompt the audience in case there are any more questions which you want to fly into us. But in the meantime, I'm going to ask the panel to get their crystal balls out slightly and talk about what they see as the opportunity for the next, let's say, 5 years, but I'll let them take it whichever way. So what are they excited about when they think about the region in terms of finance, in terms of their professions as well? Who would like to lead on that one first?
I don't mind. I'll go. I think fintech Digital banking, I think we'll continue to see a lot of acceleration on that. Regulatory sandboxes in Saudi, UAE, Bahrain, they're all encouraging innovation. So I think we'll continue to see more on that. I think we've all talked about private credit, and I think we will certainly see, more in that area. Sustainable finance, it's part of almost every single vision plan. Energy transition, all to the strategy of the region. So ESG-linked lending and green sukuks, they'll continue to become more mainstream than they are today. Cross-border investment flows, massive growth area, right? All the governments here are driving bilateral trade agreements, free trade agreements. UAE's got their CEPA trade agreements, and the idea, and if you listen to a lot of, Dubai Inc., Abu Dhabi Inc., Riyadh Inc., leaders, it's all about, flows, inbound and outbound flows. So I think that is, we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg there. Islamic finance, another area, I think that will continue to see a lot of growth. From a communications perspective, I would say, storytelling will need to reflect both local and global, nuances, relevance, and showing how MENAT is shaping the future of finance and not just catching up to it. I think that will be core to the storytelling.
Perfect. Thank you. Lisette, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I think there's a economic shift also taking place in the last few years. There's been quite a lot of development with the stock exchanges in the GCC, and a lot of these countries and companies have become, they're all included in the MSCI Emerging Market Index. And it kind of creates the opportunity to invest in the country by global asset managers and companies. And it's perhaps it could be on a shorter term. They're not tied in for a long term like they are with infrastructure until they get the confidence to invest and they see that they're really getting good returns and possibly exploring more in the region, and then obviously looking to infrastructure and other investments, and then obviously private credit, which is a great opportunity, especially with the volatility that's happening in the global environment, and people are looking to private markets, where we might globally call private markets or alternatives a different asset class, where in the UAE it's very much part of their traditional asset classes as well. There's so many great investment opportunities that's aligned to their vision plans. And there's a great opportunity to kind of talk to those themes that's aligned to those visions plans, like I've mentioned before, renewable energy, smart cities, real estate development, and kind of just helping to shape the media landscape that's out there and telling those financial services stories. I think there's a great opportunity for global companies to partner with local talent, understanding the local nuances and understanding the local language barriers. And then obviously bringing that financial expertise to partner with people, because that would be part of your localization requirements. It's not just opening an office there, but also to in some areas to hire local talent.
Brilliant, thank you. Adam?
Yeah, I think trade and investment between countries in the GCC is going to increase with the whole of the rest of the world, as this week's announcements suggest. But I'm particularly excited about these links with Asia that are getting closer. I think that's going to be a big story of the next few years. There's a lot of work being done at the moment to kind of create financial infrastructure between Asia and the Middle East. So, you can buy Hong Kong and mainland China ETFs in Saudi. You can buy Saudi ETFs in Hong Kong and mainland China now. We may start to see cross listings at some point. The FDI is really growing. So this is a story that is still emerging, but I think is going to be very influential over the next few years. And it's going to force a lot of us to rethink the way that we perceive the Gulf. I think historically a lot of us have thought about oil, gas, exports to the US becoming a much more complex story. The other sort of aspect that I'm particularly excited about is is the development of the markets themselves in the region. You know, historically, there's been a lot of savings, a lot of wealth in the Middle East, as there has been in Asia, that's primarily been invested outside the region. What happens if financial markets change in a way that allows more of that to be invested and deployed in the region itself? I think there's tremendous scope for that. And if you're a bank or an asset manager or an index provider or a financial data provider, a load of opportunity from a comms and reputational perspective as well.
Brilliant, thank you. So my notes from everything that you've said, and it's so much in the time we've had, this is all about shaping the future of finance. And I think for our audience, it's thinking about making sure they do their research, making sure they're both globally and locally relevant, being smart and specific with what they're doing, and thinking long term. So with that, I'm going to wrap the conversation. So thank you, Adam, Lisette and Farah, for your amazing contributions today. I know that everyone's hung on for the full hour, which is always a good sign that they're listening hard, and that you're adding to the community. So we really appreciate it, and thank you. For those of you who are listening, I really hope you've enjoyed the conversation. If you aren't signed up as a member of Financial Narrative already, please do visit the website. It means you get access to all of these. Here we go. Got the link coming through. Get access to events like this the whole time. For those of you in London or visiting London, on June the 3rd, we're going to be in person with a brilliant conversation talking about navigating the very fast moving world around us, which will be great. And anyone who is heading to Amsterdam for Money 2020, we're also going to be there hosting panels and also a meetup. So please do let us know if you're going to be in town, and we will look forward to seeing you there. But otherwise, I will say thank you to everybody, and we will look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Elspeth. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.